Welcome back to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the Grand Tour stage of the year so far. I mean, we've only had 9 stages, but this is a stage we will all remember for a long time. Incredible. It's what the organisers have been asking for, and this episode is brought to you by Pillar Performance. A word on them in a second, but I was hyped for this, Benji, because I know the GC riders don't like it, but when you add in the gravel, someone's going to have bad luck. There's bad luck, but there's also guaranteed bad luck to someone, and then the race will split apart. It's not too hard. It's not actually as hard as Strade. So I think, I was hyped for this morning.
On one end, you say it's not as hard as Strade Bianche, but I do absolutely love the way we've seen Grand Tours implement certain mini versions of monuments and one-day races in stages in the last couple of years, whether it was a mini Lombardia a couple of years ago in the Giro d'Italia, whether it was a mini LBL in the Women's Tour last year, for example. And that creates a situation where we don't just see the classics riders take on those monuments in the spring or in the latter part of the season, but we also see GC riders that might not show up for Strade Bianche take these on as well. And that's what the beauty of today is for me, where we see the riders that didn't ride Strade Bianche kind of squabble among themselves, trying to survive throughout a parcours that they're not used to. And that drives teams to try strategies, to try methods, to try survival, basically, if they know their rider is not great at a stage like this. And it gives these intricate tactics, these enjoyable dynamic throughout the entire stage, plus the dynamic of who's going to fight for the stage win that is not in GC. Are they going to try it from the breakaway? Are they going to try it from the peloton? We saw multiple versions of that today, and gotta say in advance, like you said, this was such a good stage because it had everything. It had everything from, yes, bad luck happened to one of the riders in the peloton. We will get to that later. Yes, we had young riders going above and beyond expectations, perhaps, and over-deliver. We had riders that we hope to see great performances of throughout this Giro finally deliver. And at the end of the day, such a good stage. But before we dive into it, my man, take us through the parcours.
It is. Oh, I just brought up the actual Strade parcours to compare. I was about to say it's 240. No, it's not. It's 180 kilometers long from Gubbio to Siena. 181 Ks. A flat start, so not easy to get in the break. I really didn't know how this stage was going to go, and you can actually see that with Visma at the start of this break formation because it's flat and then there's a 4K 7.6% climb. Is Roglic and Bora going to control the break? Absolutely not. HDS Astana, they want a break to go with non-GC threats, and then they want a very calm, controlled, non-fight behind. Because then the gravel is some hills, quite hard, and then the gravel begins, and there's a lot of it. There's I can't count too much, but I reckon 25 Ks of gravel in about 35, 40 Ks, and it's up and down. There's descents in the first one of them, and then steep sections on the San Martino in Grania, and then there's a long tarmac section. Poggi would normally have been gone. So, in the old Strade Bianche, that tarmac section used to be really like a place for regroupment, for tactics, but now the race opens so far away, it doesn't matter anymore. But still, in this edition, it does matter a lot to have domestiques, to have cooperation. You can come back there, or you can lose more time there. And then there's 2 more steep gravel sections, the Vico d'Arbia, 620 meters, 8.6%, and then the Colle Pinzuto, the first 440 meters, that's about 12% gravel. It's where Poggi would drop pitters in this year's Strade, then it levels off. There's the Red Bull bonus gate at the top, and then it's rolling hills until the classic finish in Siena, which a word on that finish, I'll do it at the end, but it's a finish you should know, and there's tactics in that finish. In the old Strade, when guys came together to the finish, not just guys and women, with Voling and Kopecky, being first or second through some of those corners can make or break whether you win this stage. But what did you think about break, Benji, versus GC?
Well, it was interesting because yesterday I wasn't completely sure who was going to go for breakaway, who wasn't. And I was thinking it's going to depend on riders like Pidcock, because Pidcock is the kind of rider who is on paper a bit too close to GC to maybe go in the breakaway and do it from the breakaway. And therefore, he might be forced to do it from the peloton. But does he have the strong enough team to control the breakaway in the first place? And that then depends on how many teams are also willing to try it from the peloton versus from the breakaway. Plus, this is also an important factor. A team like EF, for example, that's a team that you'd say has quite a few stage hunters for a stage like this. But they've also got Carapos, who they want to bundle with as many riders that can try and help him survive throughout today's stage in the peloton. So that maybe takes another team away that might try to go in the breakaway that doesn't end up being in the breakaway then. So it's kind of that's the dynamic we have of multiple teams like that. But eventually there is a breakaway formation that is maybe a little bit more disappointing than I even expected, because I was expecting it to take longer. I was expecting a few more teams to at least try, and Alpecin de Koning was the prime team to try and get in this breakaway. We had Quinten Hermans trying, Caden Groves as well, a bit of a duo in the breakaway actually eventually. A group of 6 is created with Milan Fretin and Cofidis, the Bond of Age Desert Decathlon Age Desert is the other way around, Taco van der Hoorn once again for Intermarché and Lamperti for a quick step. So a lot of Belgian teams, and well, Alpecin is a Belgian, and 2 French teams. So does that mean all the other teams were like, okay, we're going to try it from the peloton? Not really. On one end, we see a detail. We see Q36.5, Pidcock's team, already at the front, kind of controlling breakaway formation. That was the first indicator to me that Pidcock was definitely going to try it from the peloton instead of the breakaway.
I think that's why the break formation stopped, because the guys who are really strong, who actually think they can win this from the break, Vatsek, Van Aert, maybe INEOS rider, Brandon Rivera, go through them, name them. They're then thinking, hold on, they want a weak break and they're going to control this long tarmac section before the gravel for us? Why would we kill our legs continuing to jump when Q365 are going to do the dirty work for us? And so you basically see, once Q365 block, no other teams tries, because they're like, well, sweet, they're going to control it and we're going to have it from the G. What do you think about Q365, Benji? Because they've decided to do this. Well, Pidcock's too close on GC in the first place. That's a mistake from previous stages. Waste of time. But then still, to try and win from the GC group, I do kind of understand it, because if he goes in the break, then you're going to have Van Aert in. You're going to have Vatsek in. You're going to have Conrad. You're probably going to have 2 Treks, Vatsek and Conrad. You're going to have multiple Treks. You're going to be outnumbered, and his team's not that good, Pidcock. It's not that strong, and he's going to get looked at and then attacked on that tarmac section, for example, that I mentioned. In the GC group, if there's not chaos, they will kind of control the race for Pidcock in theory. On the gravel, they'll have domestiques chasing a GC guy that's up the road, and he can just sit in the wheels without teammates, in theory. So I actually don't mind it, considering if Q365 had a tug buddy for him, 2 guys that could have gone on the break with him, then I think they should have gone break, but I understand the way they did it.
I think so as well, and I'm okay with this scenario too. And at the end of the day, we also see Astana being very prominent at the front of the peloton to try and make sure it's a manageable breakaway very early on. And they were okay with it being 6-ish riders up the road. That is not the craziest breakaway. That is a controllable breakaway. Because that's the fact here for Astana. If Ulisi can magically survive the stage, then if there's no dangerous breakaway that takes a couple of minutes and might take the Maglia Rosa, then it's going to be whether Ulisi can hold on or not from the peloton itself. So in doing so, that's another team that tried to block it up. Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe was also happy, like, okay, let's send up the road a 6-rider group with no dangerous riders for GC. We're okay with it. And that was kind of the settled breakaway, those 6 riders. And from that point onwards, I basically went for a little siesta. I went for a little hike to the garden center to get some herbs. But at the end of the day, not much happened.
When did you wake up? Because we were on Eurovision watch last night. We didn't mention that, but I woke up late this morning because I was watching Eurovision. Germany should have won. Germany had the best combo of...
Bullshit.
Yeah, she was good.
Terrible song. Absolutely.
No, it was a bop. I listened to it on my run.
She couldn't sing.
Yeah, she could.
She had more false notes per kilo than the average singer there.
I mean, I'm happy Austria won. I do think it lacked originality, and he just went with the Nemo code gimmick. Like, it was very, very similar. And that was tactical, and that it worked. Austria won, but still, yeah, I like Germany. I listened to it on my run today. And speaking of running, thankfully the breakaway went, and we were able to get out of the house for a couple of hours, and I went for another run in the mountains. And after age 30, we lose about 1% of our collagen each year. You've heard me talk about Pill Performance, the leaders in sports micronutrition. Well, they're stepping into a new category called performance health. And whether you're deep into a training block or just trying to stay injury-free, performance health is a category that matters to you. You got Ultra Immune C, immunity support. We came back from Albania. I felt a little bit of a nose cold coming. Made sure I had up my vitamin C. But when I'm running in the mountains, yes, I do admit I'm after 30 years old now, and my collagen is going down by 1% every year, I put in 1 scoop each day, unflavored, into my morning coffee. And the collagen repair product is built specifically for endurance athletes dealing with tendon or ligament issues like Achilles tendinopathy, hamstring strains. I got a little left hamstring one right now, which I'm navigating, and it features Tendofort, a clinically trialed collagen peptide from Galita Labs in Germany, proven to support collagen synthesis and connective tissue strength. So whether you're running, doing gym to support your cycling, or indeed cycling as well, try out not just Pillar Performance Triple Magnesium, which you've heard us talk about, but also their collagen repair products. And you can get 15% off. Head to pillarperformance.shop. That's pillarperformance.shop. Or for North American listeners, visit thefeed.com and use code ROUGE. That's capital ROUGE for 15% off your first purchase. And indeed, I'm flying Benji. But yes, back to the peloton.
Exactly, because the Strade Bianche sectors are coming in the last 50-ish kilometers of this stage, and well, we already see in the run-in that the break is not going to make it. The gap is 1 minute 45 once the peloton hits the first gravel sector. In the breakaway, we do see on that first gravel sector, you said it at the start, pretty long one. We see Hermans and Groves basically dropping everybody. That's in short the summary of what happens in that breakaway. But I'm looking at the peloton here because I'm like, okay, these teams are already flying towards the start of this gravel sector, and we see the positioning fight. Bernard is moving up just before the sector starts. We've got Yates in wheel, so he's both positioning himself and Simon Yates in the process. We see maybe Moscon moving up Primoz Roglic on the outside very nicely, because Roglic starts the first sector in position 3 or 4. So perfect start for Primoz Roglic. Tarling bringing Bernal to a pretty good position as well. UAE a bit further down, so they were not ideally positioned at the start of the sector, and that it probably doesn't help that they've got 5 GC riders, because it's hard to find domestiques to position yourself. But outside of that, what was noticeable is that Diego Ulisi started his first sector in Narnia. So the second that first sector started, I was like, yeah, Ulisi's out of plane.
Diego Ulisi, he is a very light hill sort of one-day rider. He doesn't want any gravel, doesn't want cobbles. He is a classic traditional Italian puncher. Respect him. But yeah, the gravel was not for poor old Diego today. I actually think, I'm not sure it's intentional, but I've come around to it. In these hectic Grand Tour stages, UAE dispersing their team amongst the peloton is hedging. Visma got fucked by Opie Omi because they're like, we're going to be in one line on the right-hand side, whereas UAE, they diversify. If there's a crash on the right side, well, half of the GC guys are on the left side, and they're not affected. It's actually true, though.
Is it on purpose, though?
But they just follow in the wheel, saving energy. I mean, I think, yeah, of course they would rather have like Wellens here to position. You know, Wellens in the gravel stage of the Tour last year was so good, but I wasn't concerned at any point for the UAE GC riders. I think they look fine.
I think that's fair. And we go a bit further on that gravel sector, and we see the first moves, because we see Mess Pedersen coming to the front for Little Trek after Tarling was basically keeping Bernal in position at the front and therefore half pacing a bit. Pedersen starts pacing properly on this sector, and mate, it's not just the riders. Also, I'll throw it to you because I can see you getting frustrated under my voice while I'm speaking here. The motorbikes are waving dust all over the riders. We can barely see a thing. Pedersen is leading the group, and in no time, it's 30 riders. What do you want to talk about, buddy?
I love the first pull from Pedersen because he already creates a split. And you've got, unfortunately, I think our boy Damiano Caruso, the top 10 dream is not dead, but it took a bit of a hit today. But we move on. We move on. It does get some guys behind, not big names though yet. I do think there was then a tarmac section in between the next climbs. And to me, this again reminded me, listen, Pedersen's had a great Giro. It's really difficult to criticize him. He's also thinking he's helping his team, but he's ego pulling. He's not pulling with his head here. You got Ciccone P2. Anything can happen. We're a long way from this finish. A long way. Anything can happen to Ciccone, to whoever. You want to stay, unless Roglic is already dropped, there's no need to drop yourself by pulling this hard. No one of that consequence is dropped. Like, position, do it 500 meters into the next sector, position Ciccone, sure, but I didn't see the necessity of it.
I agree with you in some sense, as in on the gravel sector, I'm okay with Pedersen pulling. I'm okay with him putting pressure on the group.
Tarmac.
Yeah. You mean on the tarmac afterwards, where he just keeps on pulling until the next sector starts, which that sector does have a climb in it, but it's not a climb where you'd say Pedersen will definitely not survive that. So I agree that maybe doing a slower tempo or not necessarily doing the pacing, leaving it to Tarling, who seemed eager to pace in the first place. To do that on the tarmac sector after the first gravel sector might have been a better strategy. Then you have Pedersen for a longer time on the next gravel sector. I would tend to agree with what you're saying there. But a small detail though, there was one man that the first GC rider that had bad luck, or it's always on the line, because on one end it's bad luck, on the other end it could be technique, it could be the way you take on a corner. Michael Storer basically crashes after his teammate crashes in front of him. Or actually, no, I'm running ahead. He was gapped on this sector. And this is also the first sector where we see Wout van Aert not necessarily waiting on Simon Yates. So from that point onwards, we know he's riding for himself as well in this stage, which that's a fine decision, but it's a balance. If Simon Yates ends up losing 5 minutes and Wout van Aert does not win the stage, then it's a bit of a bad look afterwards,
Yeah, Simon Phillip was struggling. The first sector had a steep descent in it. And Simon Phillip was not happy with on that descent. He got split and Pedersen's pulling, and basically he had to bridge back to that group, and he did just before the sector ended. But then we're looking, big effort. Yeah, what's Van Aert going to do? Because also, like Yates looks good or fine so far in this Giro, but also he wasn't dancing with Bernal and Ciccone on the first uphill finish. So what does Van Aert, how does he play it? And we didn't know the answer until until later. Sector 2, Serravalle. This is where it all kicks off. I do feel bad for Michael Storer, actually. I think he would have been in Group 2. So would other guys. We're coming into that sector. Pedersen's gone. INEOS taking control with Joshua Tarling. They've got Lucas Hamilton there, Brandon Rivera, Arnsman. They've got like 6 guys.
Yeah.
INEOS look good. And they said they're going to take it up with Dempster. And they do in a different way. Just as the sector comes in, you go, like the sector begins, you go over a little lip and there's gravel sitting on the crest. And if you try to turn into acutely on that gravel, you lose your wheel. And that's what happens to Lucas Hamilton. He crashes in front of the guys who were positioned, I would say, positioned just off the INEOS train. Thomas Pidcock and Roglic go down, not at high speed. It was a little like kicker, thankfully, before they started the descent. But they're not down, not ideal, and the dust goes everywhere. We can't see anything because of the moto, and then all of a sudden, Benji, Isaac Del Toro is smashing.
Exactly, just like almost at the same time as the crash of Hamilton, Roglic, and Pidcock happens, we see at the front that Del Toro's pushing. Ayuso was blocked up, held up by the crash of Roglic, but was able to move in front before Roglic and Sefov got up. So we've got this whole situation on the road. Now I'll try and get you through it here. Del Toro's attacking with INEOS riders in his wheel. We've got Rivera, Arensman, Bernal, and also Wout van Aert. That's the block there. We've still got an Alpecin rider, Groves maybe at the front of the race, who will get caught by this group of Del Toro and INEOS and Wout van Aert. Then behind that, we've got basically the Ayuso group with Tiberi, with the riders that survived the crash of Roglic but weren't able to follow the move by Del Toro. And then behind that is where the chaos happens with Pidcock and Roglic. And at this point, it was very hard to follow what the gaps were, in which group they were, whether there were groups in between that we weren't aware of because there's only X amount of cameras on this parkour, X amount of motorbikes. So,
Although, can I interject there?
yes, sir.
If you're watching on Discovery or on HBO Max, you can select multi-screen, and that's for a stage like this. I was on multi-screen the whole day.
Yeah.
To see the 4 different cameras. Sorry, Benji.
You're right. It's a very useful tool, and I did the same. I had the full screen normal view on TV and the multi-screen on my laptop, and I was able to follow the race a lot better, actually, because you can see other groups as well that are not on the main TV. But you're right. That's the race scenario when we basically go off that sector, the Serra Valley sector, and we slowly start to see where everybody is, but it's not great. It's not great because we're trying to look at these riders and we're seeing, okay, Pidcock and Roglic crashed together, but it looks like Roglic is now having a mechanical. And we spoke about yesterday the Maglia Rosa being given away by Roglic and Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe to Astana with Diego Ulissi. And the factor also there is that on paper that makes that Red Bull Bora's car is the second car in the convoy now, but because of the race situation, Astana is way behind. So on paper, there's no Astana car behind that group with Roglic when that crash happens. So on paper, his car is then car number 1 behind that group is how I'm imagining it. So any mechanical that he does have, he has a car on paper relatively close behind, but that's not the case because if everything's all over the road, then the cars can't pass riders. So we don't know where that car is. And there was this moment on the right side of the road where after the crash, Roglic looks like he's about to ask for a new bike or something, Patrick, but then he doesn't stop and he continues riding. It was a bit of an odd situation.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure it out. And unfortunately for Roglic, he didn't have a Tratnik there, I don't think. Or maybe someone did give him his bike.
I don't know.
Because Tratnik can give Roglic a bike.
Okay.
That's also why Tratnik was in the Visma TDF team last year. Because he gave Jonas the bike on the gravel sector. That's also, Tratnik can give Roglic a bike. Aliotti, I think, can give Roglic a bike. And, but I don't know if someone just get Pellizzari, I doubt it. He's like 6'1". So, but yeah, it was looking bad for Benji. It's like when you have the crash, you lose the time because of the split, and then you have the subsequent slow puncture, and then have to wait, and then you're losing another minute.
We start seeing on the next sector, on Sector 3, San Martino in Grania. We've spoken about the sector a lot. It was the sector for me to really see differences because there's a proper climb in this one. And we see the gaps. We see the time gaps. We've got the front group now being Bernal, Del Toro, Arensman, Rivera, and Wout van Aert. Gotta say, I want to highlight especially Rivera in here because Rivera is probably my most valuable rider in today's race. I've joked about him maybe 5 to 10 years ago when he entered the INEOS sphere that it was a bit of a friends and family signing, but in the last 2 years, he's been so incredibly good, and now he's at the pinnacle of what Brandon Rivera is for this team because he's so strong in this race. He was the strongest domestique for Egan Bernal in this race, and super impressive to see. So Brandon Rivera, that was a hell of a ride, my friend. Anyway, that group is 50 seconds on Group 2. That is Juan Ayuso, both Yateses, Tiberi, and some other riders in between. Then we've got Group 3 on 111, so that's 21 seconds behind Ayuso, including Pidcock. And then Roglic is somewhere 20 seconds behind that Pidcock group somewhere. That's a number we're not certain of because it's guessing from the distance we see on a helicopter view. So it was hard to figure that out. But this sector was the opportunity, if Roglic still feels good, to maybe take time up. But the same for Pidcock. So you've got this chasing scene, basically, of people trying to get back to the Ayuso group while the Bernal group is trying to get away from the Ayuso group. So absolutely stunning way of riding. But a question for you. We had Arensman in Group 1. Suddenly, I saw him not being in Group 1 anymore, behind, but then he was passing riders in doing so. Did he have a mechanical off screen?
Arensman had a mech. You could see him messing with his chain when the other group is passing him. This changes the stage completely. So INEOS got good luck, where their first rouleur of the day crashed out the GC favorite for the race and created a split. They also then had bad luck because Del Toro is not going to pull with Ayuso behind. Wout van Aert's not going to pull with Simon Yates behind, and also with Pinzuto and Hills coming up for the stage win. Then you just have Bernal, Rivera, Groves, and Herman. Groves actually pulled for INEOS, which is pretty nice of him.
Yeah.
Dropped. That was the Alpecin guys pulled. But now it changes because Aronsman and Rivera, you got two guys to relay, and Bernal can maybe take like 10% of the time in the wind. Aronsman's a truck. He is not going to slow down on this sort of hilly, fast, like up and down roads. The tarmac is also coming up, but it changes when he's out of that group. Now you just got Rivera, and he's pulling against, and then Bernal's not going to pull half the time with two guys sitting in his wheel. And now INEOS is in a tricky situation. I actually thought, I said it contemporaneously to you, Benji, I thought after the Grania section that INEOS should wait for Group 2. Now, even though that group was 40 seconds behind them, so it's really tough to let that come back. Maybe they were slow pedaling, but here's why. If you just pull with Rivera, he's going to drop at some point, and then Bernal might have to pull, and he's going to get attacked by Del Toro on Pinzuto. You don't know if he goes with him. Secondly, if you go back with INEOS, in that group you have Aronsman, Rivera, McNulty, maybe even Del Toro himself.
Yeah.
And they, with Roglic 40 seconds behind, they are going to pull all out together, and Trek and Vacek will pull all out, and you will take like a lot of time on Roglic. But it's really tough to give that time back, Benji.
I agree. It's one of those things where, yeah, maybe in hindsight, that would have been a great strategy. The thing is, you didn't say it in hindsight. You said it while we were watching the stage that it might be a good strategy for INEOS to do that, and I think that's a fair comment. But I agree that it's just very hard for Bernal, who's now doing really well, who might be feeling great at that moment in the race. You might not know that in 15 to 20 minutes you might explode on a certain hill when a certain rider in the group goes really hard. It's hard to probably tell as a rider in that situation what the decision there should be. So I don't mind what they keep doing. I'm enjoying the racing at this point because, let's be honest, we were heartbroken, both of us, when Bernal crashed out of Classica Jaén, broke his collarbone, couldn't ride Strade Bianche. To see him ride mini Strade Bianche and do it absolutely shredding every gravel sector with all GC riders except Del Toro behind, my man, I was happy seeing that. And let's see if it continues, because the gaps kind of stay relatively similar by the end of San Martino and Grania. And we do see Roglic and Pidcock catching up with a group, but I had a hard time figuring out which group, but it turns out it was the group behind Ayuso, so they're now in Group 3. And the gaps are as followed after this third sector. Bernal, Rivera, and Wout van Aert are at the front. Then Vacek and Harper attacked from the Ayuso group and are now on 20 seconds of Bernal, so that's an interesting angle.
This was bizarre.
We'll get to that. It gets more bizarre as it continues, in my opinion. Then Ayuso, the Yates, and Tiberi on 45 seconds of the front of the race. And Pidcock and Roglic are suddenly on like a minute 20, a minute 15. So Roglic went from a terrible situation, crashing, a mechanical that I'm not sure ended up a mechanical in the end. He ended up taking time back, getting back to Pidcock. With Pidcock, he got back to Group 3 behind Ayuso. So it's a salvaged position right now. But now it depends on what will happen for the rest of the race and also who's there. Because who's pacing for them? We've got Pellizzari, who, gotta say, man, what is a Pellizzari at this point? Because if
he's
Pellizzari rode for himself, what could he do in this Giro?
Top 10?
I think so too.
Pellizzari is the savior right now for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. I mean, he was the main guy pulling all the time for Roglic, trying to keep the time in check, and he did, but the gap was going out a little bit. Vacek, I don't understand. So it's a long tarmac section. He spends this whole tarmac section before the last two gravel sections and Pinzuto solo bridging, whilst Rivera's pulling full and Bernal's pulling a little bit, to Van Aert and Del Toro. And I was like, Ciccone is going for GC here, right?
Yeah.
And also, Ciccone can win this stage. He's not slow. Like, if the guys ahead have done too much, I assumed Vacek was going to get on the front of Group 2, and luckily for Roglic got very lucky that he didn't. I thought Vacek was going to rip Group 2 across to Group 1, because he literally did it himself. He went across himself on the tarmac.
And it got even more painful because, yes, Vacek comes along and joins that front group. But then we get to the Monte Aperti sector, the second last one? You gave it a different name earlier, but I'm pretty sure it's the same sector as the Monte Aperti one from Strade Bianche. And there we see Del Toro attacking that front group with Bernal and Vacek getting in trouble. And at first, well, Van Aert can definitely follow there. He's following solidly in the wheel of Del Toro, but Bernal comes back, Vacek struggles, but also comes back. But that's a first sign. That's a first sign of the fact that if this happens again on Pinzuto, Vacek is not making it back by the end of the stage. So the chance for victory is limited here. At first, I can understand maybe Vacek going for the stage win because Ciccone might not believe in a podium or something, and therefore is okay with the position he's in that second group. Okay, I'm relatively okay with that. But it gets worse after the Monte Aperti, because we see Del Toro attacking again on Colli Pinzuto, the last sector. We'll go to the peloton in a second, by the way. We'll talk about this front group first. And that's where Vacek and Bernal properly get dropped. And Bernal, like, I'm talking parcheggio dropping at this point is what it felt like. But also Vacek, he ends up after this Colli Pinzuto sector just staying in the wheel and even riding with Bernal a bit. And I'm like,
That part's incredible.
that makes no sense.
Like, Bernal's a GC competitor for podium for Ciccone.
Yeah.
Vacek cannot win the stage. Like, that was clear when he already got gapped on the little... Because these climbs are replicas of what was coming in Siena. Even if he comes back with them. So I really didn't... Maybe the plan was he'd go across Benji, sit on, and then he'd like Van Aert's strategy. Van Aert's strategy was, okay, I'm not going to wait for Simon Yates. He's also not a favourite to win the race. But by me sitting here, it will stop the group's cooperation on the tarmac. Or if they do pull all out, I'm in a better place to win the stage. Maybe that was the logic. But yeah, I didn't really...
The last part doesn't make sense either way,
with
though.
Bernal's makes no sense.
And even sitting there for that part either, because at that point you can literally be pacing for Ciccone, riding him away from Roglic, and in doing so, riding him closer to Bernal as well. So that would have been the perfect strategy for Little Trek. They did it eventually after like what felt like 10-15 minutes of riding where they should have done it already. So a bit late. Maybe we're underrating the fact that radios might have not been optimally working at this point in the race. Pretty chaotic race situation at this point, but maybe I'm giving a bit too much of a benefit of the doubt in that situation. But we spoke about this front group now. We've spoken about the fact that Del Toro and Van Aert are basically riding off to a fight for the stage win. What are the time gaps right now, and what is happening in the group behind? Because was the Ayuso group on roughly a minute or so?
They were hovering around 40 seconds, and then when Del Toro pressed the gas on the two last gravel sectors, it really goes out. Van Aert, as you said, the only one that can follow him, including on Pinzuto, and it goes after Pinzuto. It's over a minute. Ayuso was attacking. Ayuso's I think he's in a blender this whole last 50 Ks because on the long gravel sector, on San Martino de Ingrania, he tries to bridge across. Very, very risky because if you get caught on the tarmac in between the groups after a big bullet, which might have actually happened, or maybe didn't even get across, you got problems. And then, he was kind of stuck. Do I chase Del Toro myself? Because then there's Roglic behind he wants to take time on. In the end, it was mostly McNulty pulling, he's bleeding, he had a heavy crash. So I think Ayuso he wasn't comfortable with the race situation. That was very, very clear. Although Del Toro wasn't pulling. Del Toro never pulled with Bernal or Arensman. He only pulled with Van Aert, who's on an hour in GC.
Well, except for the first minute of his attack. That launched the Arensman Bernal in the first place.
Yeah.
But for the most of it, he was not pulling. And then at the end, indeed, he was riding with Van Aert in his wheel, basically, in the last 15-ish kilometers towards the Piazza del Campo finish. And in my honest opinion, when Colli Pinzuto happened, at the top of that, Van Aert looked completely cooked.
He looked fucked.
He nearly crashed into the back wheel of Del Toro because he was so cooked in the first place. But the benefit is, he doesn't need to take over because he knows that Del Toro will keep on riding for GC. That's the major benefit.
Well, you see Van Aert goes up to Del Toro. You can see him, I think, trying to make a deal. Del Toro says, I think no, and then the next pinch attacks him.
I think it's fair.
Of course it's fair.
Wout cannot offer much to Del Toro either, in my opinion. Like,
say
a little bit of time.
Say Wout pulls. What, you get 5-10 seconds extra?
Get it?
Oh,
Wout pulls?
Wout Henricus Lambertius, yes. but like Del Toro is going to pull full gas anyway. It's not like Wout sitting in his wheel is going to stop him pulling. And so at the moment, it looked like, yeah, why would Del Toro have a deal? He can pull himself and still win the stage. And that's what it looked like was happening. But then what you just said about Wout's handling Benji, that then, as the tarmac continued, we've done the last gravel sector as Van Aert's freewheeling, whilst you see Del Toro's pushing. And, he's not Pogacar. He is also like, drafting matters. And we then see Del Toro make a mistake. On the corner, Valverde nearly crashed on. There's a sharp right-hander in Strade. Very sharp right that you can miss. Del Toro nearly crashes in it. In the multi-screen, you can only see it. Van Aert takes it better. There's a fast downhill. Van Aert comes over the top of him, puts him on a bit of a gap because he knows the course may be better. Yep. And then there's another left-hander, and I see a roundabout, and Del Toro makes another handling mistake. I'm like, I think he's not cooked, but he's fatiguing, which is normal. But he's still ripping this gap open to the groups behind. Roglic has lost Pellizzari. That group is going nowhere. By the way,
what are the gaps?
At the moment? They're on 2 minutes plus. So really the last, after Pinzuto, when Roglic lost support, they were treading water barely. They went from 130 to 220 to Roglic.
And it was G that I think separated himself from that big group that they were in. And then Roglic bridged towards G, and some other riders like Pidcock bridged as well. And there was like to me, it seemed like it was like a 4-rider time trial for a little bit of that last portion of the course. But anyway, continue.
Going to Siena, Van Aert's been sitting in the wheel. Can he? He's come. It looked to me like Brabants against Remco. We've got a hard finish. Can he beat Del Toro, who looked a stronger rider? Del Toro didn't have the snap on Siena. He had to lead it out the whole way, and so he didn't have that burst to get Van Aert off the wheel. I think he did have him on like a meter right at the top. But actually, Van Aert comes back to the wheel and then goes past him straight away. Cancellara, I think, won Strade with a very similar attack against Stibar. I might be making it up, but I seem to remember where Van Aert seated, went past Del Toro before the pivotal corners. Del Toro's got sunglasses nearly fall onto his eyes out of his helmet, and he has to put his hand up and push them back twice. Because I thought he was waving angrily at Wout, but if you look closely, he's actually having to fix his sunnies and lost 400.
Marginal losses.
It is. If you have to take your hands off the bars when you're trying to sprint somebody, it doesn't help. I never rode professionally, but
I want to bring it back to something you said at the start of this podcast. On this finish, you said it was tactical with the corners. Explain before we get to how the riders do it.
There's a right-hander, then a left-hander, and if you're first, you can dictate the speed completely. You can brake check guys completely out of it. You choose your own line. It's really hard to come underneath you, and in fact, even if you stuff the corner up, you can still, with the first position, save it and beat the guy that was behind you, and especially the last right-hander. If you're first into the last right-hander with the downhill run, you win. And Van Aert makes sure he's first into there. Del Toro tried to come back on him, but he couldn't undercut him. Van Aert hits the barrier like Ciccone. He just grazes the barrier, doesn't go down, and he wins this stage, his first win of the year, ahead of Isaac Del Toro, who takes the pink jersey. Ciccone, third. I really think it could have been different for him and Trek, but they've won enough, I guess. Carapaz, fourth. Good result for him. Simon Yates, fifth on 1 minute. They're all basically on a minute, by the way. Tiberi on the same time, sixth. Ayuso got dropped a little bit, 107. Aronsman, very unlucky. I think Aronsman would have changed this stage completely. He leads over Bernal, or actually drops him. He's eighth. Bernal on 110. Adam Yates 110. Edward Plancart, by the way, what the fuck? Edward Plancart is such a good rider. Like, he is. If he was on like INEOS, if he was riding for like a big GC guy, I mean, what would he have done for Bora today?
Very valuable.
Like Edward Plancart on Flanders, he's the guy that bridged Van der Poel back. In Vuelta last year, when Visma paced on that long climb for Van Aert, he locked down and led out Groves to win, and now he comes 12th, 11th even. That's crazy. Such a good rider. McNulty 12th, Genietz 13th. He was there all day. Vasek 14th. Pidcock and Roglic and Caruso finish on 2:22.
What a race, man.
Great
what
stage.
An incredible race. And it had everything from an aggressive INEOS in the way they rode. I loved it. Yes, they definitely overextended in the long term, and it ends up costing Bernal a little bit compared to some other podium candidates. But at the end of the day, I loved seeing it from start to finish what INEOS did today. And then we see the rest of the teams. We see Primoz Roglic, who gets hit by a crash and has to bravely fight back from that. Pidcock, who was caused in the same crash, also has to fight back from that. Pidcock crashing helps Roglic a lot, actually, in this race, because while Roglic had to come back to Pidcock himself, from that point onwards, he's got an ally in trying to come back towards the front. So that's also a fight within the race, if that makes sense. And then we got the fight from the early breakaway. Don't care too much across this entire storyline. But then the way in which Wout van Aert, who, let's be honest about it, since his crash at La Vuelta last year, he has not had the best run in terms of results. And in my opinion, he actually had a pretty okay classic season in hindsight, because I wasn't necessarily expecting him to win a monument, and to see him be getting top 5 in both Roubaix and Paris, in both Roubaix and Paris-Roubaix, both in RVV and Paris-Roubaix, after an omloop and opening weekend that was really disappointing. Then Dwars of Vlaanderen getting hit by that, by the 1v3 loss against Paulus, fighting back from that towards the monuments and still getting okay results in those races, because in RVV he was good. I'm sorry, but we like joking about the fact that Wout van Aert gets second quite a few times. Those were good results for Wout van Aert, in my opinion. And yes, you can say Wout van Aert expects to win a monument, whatever. I didn't expect to see that, so I was pretty content with the results I saw, but a rider like that wants to win. And even at the start of this Giro, it didn't happen. Getting second behind Pedersen in the time trial was disappointing. In the breakaway yesterday, couldn't even get in it. So it's this follow-up of constant, not necessarily failure, but disappointments for himself, because we can be, like, as fans, we can be very loud about being disappointed in someone's performance, but at the end of the day, the rider themselves is going to be even more disappointed in themselves. And it's very nice to see Wout van Aert then win today's race and probably not be as disappointed in himself anymore, finally being able to break through that barrier of not taking victories in a long while. And will it be the last for the Giro, or what do you reckon?
I don't know. I have to look for the other stages, but certainly it brings the pressure down off him.
Yes.
So when you see him in the break formation yesterday, like freaking out behind Pedersen, chasing with the whole peloton in his wheel, just brings that pressure down. And then when that happens, when you're on a run, or you start to have positive things happen for you, like with, you can just be more relaxed, and then the situations become better for you. And I think having Simon Yates behind him helped today, because I actually think if Simon Yates wasn't behind, he pulls more, because he can't help himself. I think he would have felt, whereas with Simon Yates behind, he pulls a little bit more. And he can't pull. So yeah, it's a big win for him. And also for Visma, because Koi's been disappointed twice, and then there was the pink jersey for the offer in the TT in Albania. That didn't happen, so it's good before the first rest day.
And I think the beauty in it is that the first few road races where Wout van Aert started to perform on the road was in Strade Bianche, back in the day with his Crelan Verandas Willems blue shirt, where he nearly crashed, or did crash on the final bump towards, I'm calling it a bump. It's more than a bump. The finish in Siena. I think he cramped and fell over.
Yeah, he got cramp right at the end.
Yeah. And like, it's quite nostalgic then to think back at that moment, and now seeing him take the victory in this Giro stage, it kind of goes full circle. But maybe I'm going into it a bit too emotional from this point. But what do we see from the rest? Because Del Toro, what a race, and we got to talk about him now. Maybe we've disrespected him a little bit by not mentioning him in like the favorites for this Giro. I'm still not certain. I've still got a massive question mark for Week 3 Mountains, but let's talk about it, Mr. Patrick, because today he takes loads of time on Roglic, roughly 2 minutes plus. He takes about a minute plus on Ayuso and other GC riders in that group. On basically every GC rider in the race, he does that. You pointed it out yesterday. We knew in general from Classica Cayenne and some other gravel that he is good on this terrain. Does this give an indication for us towards Week 3 where there's proper mountain stages? Because he might be ahead, but I don't know what to expect for Week 3.
I mean, UAE could not be in a better position for GC. And I really, from Del Toro's perspective, I think he's okay with it. He's in the pink jersey by 1:13 ahead of his teammate Ayuso. Ayuso's then the second best placed GC rider. And then UAE have two other riders ahead of Roglic still on GC in McNulty and Yates. Have you done the full top 10?
I have not.
Sorry, Tiberi's on 130, Carapaz 140, Ciccone moves up 9 spots to 5th on 141. Simon Philip Yates is on 142 in 6th. Bernal 157 moves up from 15th to 7th. McNulty up a spot, but he looked like he was cut up pretty bad. Yates up a few spots on 201. Roglic drops 7 spots to 225. Storer 3 spots to 11th on 303. Caruso still in 12th on 306. So the dream lives. I actually think, Pellizzari drops out. It's Ulisi and Fortunato. They weren't built for this today. They lose 5 minutes or something. Poor lads. I mean, Fortunato's they're going for KOM anyway, so
they're going to breakaway again.
Yeah, it's fine. Poole loses a lot. He's like the main guy in the top 10 who was going for top 10. He loses 16 spots. He's on 535. So whatever you don't have to do anything. Bora's team doesn't look that good. They've lost Hindley. Martinez, who knows? I mean, he doesn't look like he can do anything at the moment. They have Del Toro, 222 ahead of Roglic, 225 ahead of Roglic, and Ayuso's now 112 ahead of Roglic. Roglic is not going to take that in the time trial. They just can sit on him.
They can sit on him, but...
Or play with him.
This is the kind of situation where there's now 4 UAE riders in front of Roglic in GC. Obviously, they shouldn't just look at Roglic. There's other riders in this race that they also need to look at. They also shouldn't fully ride for Del Toro. There's too big of a question mark with him when it comes to week 3 in terms of multi-mountain stages following each other up. We need to consider that a potential vulnerability that we have not seen confirmed yet. Ayuso also, like, we've seen him in Grand Tours in the past. There's also a potential for a bad day there. So it's good that they've got multiple riders in front of Roglic. I don't necessarily see any chance that McNulty ends up becoming the man for the team, but he's a factor that they can play with. But in what sense can they play with these riders? Because if we look at, for example, week 3, and we go specifically to San Valentino stage, which follows on stage 8, stage 16, we've got the 2 last climbs of that are pretty damn hard climbs, actually. You know, we're talking 13 kilometers at 8% roughly is what I'd say, and the final climb of that stage is 18 kilometers in total at 6%, but that's a bit of a fake news climb because there's false flat sections and a bit of a downhill segment in there twice. So the grade, it's a bit steeper than that. There's a proper steep segment in there. So that's a hard stage with lots of altitude meters. So easily 2 of these 4 riders can disappear in that stage. And if I'm in the position of Roglic, it's weird to say, but he should be happy that he's still in the running, because he could have lost his Giro completely here. Pidcock being there, Pellizzari being there is the only reason that Roglic is still in the game right now. He's on 2 minutes. Vacek, you're right, because Vacek could have actually hurt him even more. We're talking 2 minutes 25. It's still Primož Roglic we're talking about. And I actually kind of like seeing him in this situation where he will be forced to attack, because that's when we've seen the most crazy Primož Roglic performances. Some have backfired in the final stage of Paris-Nice a couple of times, but then at the end of the day, we've seen a Roglic go on a rate that Bernal launched at La Vuelta on Lagos de Covadonga, for example, that really, really worked out. So, what do you? For me, in my opinion, it's a positive for Ayuso as well that Del Toro is ahead, because it will force other riders to overextend while Ayuso can just follow them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of climb stages where you need to climb, but then there's valleys afterwards where you can play. There's stages, like even stage 14, but that doesn't start too hard. Could be a sprint stage, but I'm looking at stage 13 to Vicenza. Like, Bora's team doesn't look that good. I guess if McNulty or Adam Yates attack, I think other guys will close that, so that doesn't really work, because is Ciccone and Simon Yates and Carapaz, they're not just going to let McNulty and Adam Yates leapfrog them in GC? Or will they look at Roglic to do it? It also depends on how banged up the riders are, because what Ayuso apparently needs stitches in his knee, according to Benson. McNulty's hurt. How hurt is Roglic? How does that affect the time trial on Tuesday? So I think we'll know a bit more after the TT on Tuesday, what people's shape is. But, I mean, lucky Jay Vine's here for UAE and Micah. I don't really know how they'll play it. I guess the default is just do nothing.
The default is using Del Toro's position that he's in to force other riders to attack the team, and therefore the riders like Ayuso and so forth can benefit from the situation that these other riders need to attack. They can also play it a bit aggressively with a McNulty or something, trying to slip him in an early breakaway to try and get him further up the road as well, but that might make the race harder in general, which I'm not sure these other riders might want on massive mountain stage. I'm not sure Del Toro wants a 4,500 altitude meter stage to be absolutely lethal in terms of the tempo that's being ridden all day. Maybe Roglic doesn't want that either, to be honest, based on the last 2 years of him. So there's a couple of question marks there. I think playing it defensive is the best option, to be clear. But I also am of the opinion that if they do see weakness somewhere, they should use it, because playing it uber defensive might backfire in the end of week 3.
Yeah, Roglic is only 112 behind Ayuso. Let's say Del Toro blows up. He's young. He's not proven he can do it in the Vuelta. He was like good some days last year, then not good other days. Let's say in the mountains, which we haven't had real ones yet, he's no good. Well, then you got 112 on Ayuso. Are you going to nurse that defensively against Roglic for 2 weeks? I don't think so. I wouldn't do it that way. So you're right. I guess what they can do is anytime there's an attack, if Ayuso goes with them, Del Toro can let it go. Why? Because by definition, Ayuso will be the best placed GC rider in that group because he's second. So, I mean, they're looking good if they play it right.
I think so as well.
I also think Ayuso is very nervous. He's crashed today. He was panicking. I think he was not comfortable entirely with the situation up the road.
I think that's fair, but I also think that applies to like 90% of the peloton today on this terrain.
True.
Carapaz might have been
Carapaz
the most
and Simon Yates,
one.
they were chilling.
Yeah.
They were like, we're not dropped by 2 minutes. Fuck, good day. Seriously.
How big is the chance, in your opinion, that Del Toro wins this Giro?
Pretty low.
I think so, too.
But I don't know, if he's the next coming of Pogacar, then they've just given 2020 Pogacar a big head start.
He's got a similar style, you know, on the gravel, like the mining style, the mine worker style, whatever you call it.
Yeah, the Tom Dumoulin. There looks like a mine worker. They didn't give me kiwi fruit.
I have no clue what you said.
They didn't give me kiwi fruit. Or was it apple?
Yeah, it was a kiwi. He wasn't getting his kiwi fruit.
Okay.
To be fair, if a man wants a kiwi
fruit is superior to apple.
Give them a kiwi fruit.
Of course, yeah. Del Toro, you're right. He does have a very similar style. Ayuso too with the inturned hoods, but we'll see. Maybe Ayuso attacks him, Benji. I don't think Ayuso's not going to let Del Toro win this Giro, by the way.
Of course not.
So, like, we can say all we want about Ayuso, follows nicely in the wheels, but he wants to win the Giro.
I think so as well. Now, a question I do have is, if we take a look at the year that we've seen from Del Toro so far, we've had Del Toro in the last 2 years do pretty well in certain races, Tirreno top 5 in GC, etc. But how much experience have we with seeing Del Toro perform at a Grand Tour after an altitude camp? Because I'm guessing he didn't have altitude before Tirreno last year? Or would he have?
No idea. I mean, he did it. I think yeah.
He had a Vuelta, but it wasn't that great.
Yeah, his Vuelta was a bit underwhelming. Well, not just I thought, like for everyone, it was a bit underwhelming. So I don't know. I was going to say, we should preview the TT, Benji.
We should.
From Lucca to Pisa, it's 28.6 K. It'll be a beautiful TT. We had a beautiful gravel stage today. It starts at Lucca and then heads south. They do a few turns in the city and then, yes, finish in Pisa. It's pretty much straight except for a little climb in the middle. But it's mostly flat. Like I say, climb, but you won't even see that it's a climb. They have 2 intermediate time checks, 8.5 Ks, 20.5 Ks, and it's 29 kilometers long. Should take them about 34 minutes, 33 minutes, depending on the wind. And it's for the specialists. I don't know if Josh Tarling, hopefully he finished the stage in good shape.
I think so.
I'm picking Van Aert to win.
Well, he looked pretty solid today. I'm picking Josh Tarling, though.
Fair enough. In terms of GC, I think the injuries from today could really affect this TT. It's not very pleasant that they have to do a 30-minute threshold all-out effort on a TT bike after some crashes. So
one rest day though.
One rest day, but that's sometimes you'll feel a bit sorer the next day.
Yeah. Second day is sometimes worse.
Yeah. I've crashed many times, so it's my specialty. Yeah, GC, who do you think would be the best placed GC guy?
Ooh.
What do I think the place? So Derek G's got to have a better TT. He's got to pick it up.
He has to. It's a longer time trial, so I'd expect so. I'd expect Rollich's TT to be proper as well, to be honest. I didn't see him look that terrible today either. Like, he crashed, but at the end of the day, I do expect a solid time trial on Tuesday. Ayuso, it's weird because I've always seen him perform well in shorter time trials or in Switzerland time trials. We're not in Switzerland this time. It's not a short time trial. I don't expect him to win this time trial, but I also don't expect him to lose an unreasonable amount of time. But I do expect Roglic to be better in this time trial.
Yeah. I think Roglic will, I think Ayuso might have a stinker, actually. I think Roglic will take time back. Roglic likes getting knocked down to the mat. That's where he's happiest. Roglic likes having a disappointment, and then he comes back the next GC stage and he punches you back in the mouth. And for the Giro, it would be very exciting if he does do that on this TT. So I'm glad we do have a GC stage straight away, but I think Carapaz will lose time.
Can we just talk about the fact that Luke Plapp probably partied quite a lot yesterday because he came in last on 25 minutes?
Damn. I mean, why not?
Why not? Won a stage. Why not? He can try it again on stage 11.
I don't know why riders are not lazy enough. So many riders try.
Victor Lafay tries to uphold your definition of lazy.
He tries just the right amount. Yeah, as soon as I would get dropped, if I was in a GC rider, I would finish last every day and like put a podcast in or something. but maybe they're like, fuck it, I'll get to the finish quicker so I can have a shower. I hope you enjoyed.
Arensman. Good TT. Expected.
Arensman got stuffed today. He got stuffed because look where he finishes in that group, and he had to wait, had a mech, had to pull. He would have moved up so much in GC because Bernal and him would have stayed away. And then his TT, long TTs are good. He got stuffed today. But it is what it is. INEOS caused some bad luck for others, and then they got bad luck themselves. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed our recap of Stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia. I think this is the best stage of the week. Hard to argue with that. And the Giro was very, very firmly on. I enjoyed it very, very much. Hope you did, Benji. And we'll see you on Tuesday with the time trial recap. Until then, ciao, ciao.